Welcome back to another episode of the Bearcat Basketball Podcast. This is Season 2. I'm your host, Alex Meacham, former UC basketball player from 1997 to 1999 under the legendary coach, Bob Huggins. I was fortunate enough to wear the iconic Jordan brand unis during my time. Now, you can follow me on social media. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Alex_Meacham. Meacham is spelled M-E-A-C-H-A-M. I'm also on Facebook and LinkedIn, Alex Meacham. I'm on Snapchat, Big Meach 41. And now, I can officially say this, on Season 2, I am now on TikTok, at Alex Meacham 41. This is a special edition of the podcast, my interview series with a very special guest. The Bearcat Basketball Podcast is now presented by Healthcare Management Group. Shout out to everyone at HCMG, and thanks for the support. Bearcat fans, I'm excited to welcome in my next guest. He came on the podcast December 16th, and he was a big hit amongst Bearcat fans. He covers the Bearcats for the Inquirer. And back by popular demand, my guy, Keith Jenkins. What's going on, Keith?
Allow me to reintroduce myself now. What up, Meach, man? It's good. It's good to be back, man. It's great. I'm grateful to hear that the first podcast with us went well. So I'm happy to be back.
Yeah, for sure. Big hit. Bearcat fans were reaching out, and they were saying that we had such a great rapport together on the first podcast. They wanted us again. They wanted us to run this back, and I'd like to continue to have you on. We're kind of like Run DMC, I guess. So we got that.
No pressure.
We got that back and forth going, man. How you dealing with the weather, man? We're kind of snowed in.
Yeah, this sucks. This sucks. I'm very happy to be back in my hometown and covering the Bearcats, but this is not fun. I did not miss this part of Cincinnati. So, but no, I mean, considering COVID and everything else, and I mean, you know, former colleague of mine, Pedro Gomez, died unexpectedly the other day, and a family friend of mine died at 48 unexpectedly. So not to get dark and start off in a weird place, but just considering the craziness of the world and everything that's going on, I'm super, super grateful to be alive and to be talking to you, my brother.
There's no question. I think that's well said. And what I want to cover for this podcast, I want to quickly talk about Bearcat football. I've got a couple topics, coaching-wise, recruiting-wise, I want to touch on. Then I want to jump into Bearcat hoops, of course. And then finally, we're going to get into a topic I love to talk about, and I know it's going to ruffle some feathers. We're going to talk about the top 5 greatest rappers of all time.
Ooh, let's get it.
Yeah, man. So let's jump into Yeah, for sure. Let's jump into Bearcat football real quick. Last time we spoke on the podcast, we talked about some potential coaching departures. Would Luke Fickell be around for very long? And little did we know that Marcus Freeman would be gone. So I want to know your thoughts on Marcus Freeman and how that impacts recruiting.
Yeah, Freeman's departure is a tough loss for Cincinnati. There's no, dancing around that one. He's been Luke Fickell's defensive coordinator for all 4 seasons here. So I mean that no turnover, that consistency, that leads to success. You know, that when things are the same and you're able to build upon things each year, that's one of the reasons why they've been so successful. Freeman has been that ace in the hole, that secret weapon for Luke on the recruiting trail. He's been that guy that he's able to, put in the living rooms when we were able to. But when you talk to Marcus, he's such an authentic guy. You believe him. He's so passionate. He doesn't sell you a dream. He's just brutally honest with you about everything, and players respect that, and players respond to that. I think the fact that, look, he and I are the same age. You know, we played against each other. We played with a lot of the same people. We have a lot of mutual friends. We're both Ohio kids. I think one of the positives that Luke had in Marcus was the fact that he was a young black guy who had NFL experience and could tell guys who are looking to go that route, hey, you can do that here at Cincinnati. You can accomplish your goals here at Cincinnati. So to have him gone is going to be interesting to see how that impacts things going forward. And not only Marcus, who was not only a great defensive coordinator and a great coach, coaching the linebackers, and a great recruiter, but also losing, Chad Bowden, who was the director of recruiting, who went to Notre Dame with Freeman. So to have these two guys who were such big parts of the greatness that Luke Fickell has been able to build here, it's going to be interesting to see truly what that impact will be. Now looking forward, Luke has hired Mike Tressel to replace Freeman, and Mike Tressel is a guy who has similar philosophies as Luke Fickell and Coach Freeman. They're all friends. They've all known each other for years. They've all been on the same recruiting trail and recruiting this 300-mile radius that UC loves to work. So he's a guy who has similar philosophies and knows the area as well. So I think that's going to pay great dividends as far as what this team and that defense will look like going forward. But it remains to be seen, how much we will really feel the impact of Freeman leaving. But I think as far as Mike Tressel goes, I don't know if you could have made a better hire if you're Luke Fickell, because he's just a guy who he coached here previously when D'Antonio was the head coach. So he knows the area, he knows the fan base. And he's seen this program grow from afar, after spending the last 14 years at Michigan State. So, Tressel comes here with the cupboard fully open. I mean, he's got a lot of great talent coming back, and so this team, at least defensively, I would guess they shouldn't miss much of a beat under Tressel.
Mm-hmm. So, give me some thoughts on next year based on the roster that's coming back. Some of the new recruits they have coming in. The expectations for this football team are pretty high. So what are your thoughts on this team coming back next year?
Yeah, they should be good, like I said. I mean, they have still one of the best secondaries in the country, the best secondary in the American Conference. Kobe Bryant, who was a senior last year, an all-conference performer at corner, he's coming back. He's decided to utilize that extra year of eligibility in return for another year. So it's good to see Kobe back. And then on the other side, Ahmad Sauce Gardner is back. Mm-hmm. And they have been, the top two, quarterback or cornerback tandem in the conference for the last, 2 seasons. So to see those two guys back there, now they got to replace 2 all-world safeties in James Wiggins and Derek Forrest, but they got guys behind them who have a lot of experience and are capable. And then you got guys like, Darian Beavers, who's a local guy who was a senior last year at linebacker. He's coming back. He's using that extra year. And then they still got the best pass rusher in Myjai Sanders. He's coming back for his senior year. He's a guy that could have tested the NFL waters. He's like, nah, let's run it back. So defensively, like I said, man, I would feel a little more shaky about Tressel coming in after Freeman leaving, if maybe the talent wasn't there, but they are still loaded. They still got a lot of great players on the defensive side of the ball. And Luke Fickell, as the head coach with a defensive mind, is still, overseeing that side as well. And then we got Desmond Ridder at quarterback on the other side. So, I think the expectations should still be high. I don't know if it's going to be quite a New Year's Six bowl. I don't know. I'm not saying it will or it won't be. The tough part about this upcoming season is they got to go travel to Notre Dame, and they got to play Marcus Freeman and Brian Kelly, and they got to figure out a way to win, or at least show, early on that they should be in the conversation as one of those top teams against a really great Notre Dame team. And the dangerous part about Notre Dame is they've been a few players away from really standing in that class with Alabama and Clemson, and they just haven't been able to get there. Freeman is freaking dangerous of a recruiter. If he can take that, that momentum up to South Bend, man, that's going to be dangerous. But if UC can figure out a way to play well up there in South Bend, and then also they got to play Indiana. And Indiana, this isn't the Indiana football team that we grew up with. I mean, this is a different Hoosier team. That will always be a basketball school. But that football program has shown, hey, we're here, and we're going to put that basketball program on the back burner right quick.
Right.
So to have to play Notre Dame, to have to play Indiana, this isn't the non-conference schedule that they just had. So I think the schedule is going to be a challenge, but I think the talent is still there, and if they can play well again and play consistent football like they did last season, there's no reason why they shouldn't be great again.
Yeah, and I think you hire a guy like Luke Fickell, your expectations is that he's going to raise the bar for the Bearcat football program, and consistently they will be good. And playing for Bob Huggins, I remember him talking about, hey, once the bar is raised, you have to become consistently good, and that's what fans expect. And with that being said, great segue into this basketball program, and I still stand on the same mountain I stood on before and screaming that Coach John Brannon is the coach for this program for the future. I think he's going to do an excellent job, and like Luke Fickell, raise those expectations for Bearcat basketball. And so I want to jump into basically all the craziness that's kind of happened with this basketball team and where we are today. But this segment is sponsored by the College of Arts and Sciences at the University of Cincinnati. They have a new flexible bachelor's degree that will allow you to graduate conveniently and affordably. You won't lose any credit or have to start over, and I'll get people more information on how to apply for that. Let's jump into this Bearcat basketball team. Keith, on January 10th, they lost to Wichita State 82-76. The team was on pause for 25 days. 5 games were postponed: ECU, Temple, Houston, Wichita State again, and USF. Did you think this basketball team was ever going to play again?
Nope, sure didn't. Never. I should shout out the College of Arts and Sciences over at UC. I'm an alum over there, so shout out to them for.
Oh, really?
Shout out to them for cutting you a little check. But anyway,
I appreciate that. Yeah,
great to have them on board, man. That's really dope to hear. Nah, man, that stretch, 25 days. I don't care who you are, how tough you think you are mentally, physically, all of that. That will test you. When you got 25 days away from, the thing that you love most, the thing that has presented this opportunity for you to go to college and be a student athlete, and, potentially your, opportunity to feed your family and just provide but just the thing that makes you happy and the thing that brings you joy, when that's taken away from you for 3.5, 4 weeks, that's tough. And so to see them respond the way that they have with 2 straight wins, I mean, it's remarkable. And I think, like you said, you believe John Brannon is the guy for the job. I do as well. And I think that's a testament to the job that he's done this year. I mean, it's really hard to explain how difficult this is for him. But for them, the players, most importantly, I think we forget that they're 17, 18, 19, 20 years old. They're not us. They're not, 30, 40-year-olds that have lived life and have experienced some things. Look, I have my struggles with what's going on in this world, right? So I can't imagine being a 20-year-old, 19-year-old, someone who was just in high school a year or two ago and having to go through all of these things, but then yet and still be expected to be an effective and a good and a great student athlete and to win games. And it's a really tough challenge for them. I think, we as, watchers of this program and fans, need to keep that into perspective. Man, this is tough. And to see them respond the way that they have is really good to see.
And what were your expectations going into that Temple game based on everything, the pause and just not enough practice time? What were your expectations?
I thought they were going to get ran out of the gym.
Yep.
100%. And that's not being mean. It's just when you think that they had, I don't even think you could really call their practices true. They had 1 or 2 practices, but they were still limited. They had to have a graduate assistant come out and practice with them in order to have a true 5-on-5 practice. You had guys in isolation who were dealing with the virus. And, and then you get to Temple, you're starting a walk-on and Rob Banks. Keith Williams, the guy on the team, is not in the starting lineup. Tari Eason, the star freshman, is not in the starting lineup. You're starting a true freshman in Mikey Saunders. Not that, Temple's not a mountain that's unable to be climbed, but on the road with all of these things going against you, I thought it was going to be a long day. But to see them respond in the way that they did and to see a different David DeJulius, I think, that's the David DeJulius that we've been waiting to see. We've heard about. That's the guy that Brandon and his staff were so excited about getting. To see him drop 26 points, a career high, and still be so effective in the other areas, it was just a special game for him, and it's what we've been hoping and expecting from him, and it was really good to see. So to see them respond that way, it wasn't a perfect game by any stretch.
No.
They still made a lot of mistakes, but I think what we're seeing from this team is early on, before that 25-day layoff, is they were losing those close games. 6 of their 7 losses were by single digits or are by single digits. So to see them come out on the road against everything and to figure out a way to win that close game and then to turn around and win another one, I think we're seeing maturity and growth and a mental toughness, and also just an ability for John Brannon to keep his team locked in through all of this. I think we all just need to recognize, man, this is a special thing that we're seeing. We're seeing these young men and this coach navigate through this stretch. It's crazy.
What do you think's been the difference for David DeJulius? Because in my opinion, he's been the difference these 2 basketball games. But prior to, I think David's been playing well, but he's been the difference in a lot of ways these last 2 games. What do you think's been the difference for David?
I think John Brannon's been the difference. They talked about, so during this stretch where they were all away from the court, David told us about how he had COVID during the off season before things got going, and with him having the antibodies, he's been able to stay healthy, and he's been able, during that stretch, he was able to get on the court and put some work in, some extra work in with John Brannon, some one-on-one work in, and Brannon instilled in him that confidence. Like, look, despite your offensive struggles, despite you shooting 17% from the three-point line, I still believe in you. You're still the guy that I really wanted. You're still the guy that I've recruited since you were however old. I still have faith in you, and I think that goes a long way for a young man who was struggling offensively and is dealing with a lot. I mean, he was saying how, some of his closest friends on the team and guys that he grew accustomed to being able to hang out with, he couldn't do that because they were in isolation. So that was a time where, this guy who's from Detroit was away from his family during this tough stretch, and the only place he can go is the gym and his dorm room, and that's it. But with Brandon instilling in him, look, man, we're in this together, and I have the utmost confidence that you are still the guy and the leader of my team. I think that just went a long way for him, because you saw against Temple, he was shooting with confidence. He wasn't hesitating with any shot. Look, if you're shooting 17% from 3, you're going to think about that next shot.
No question.
It's human nature. But to see him go out there and be aggressive and to just, be that leader that this team needs, that's huge, man. And so, you said and you have said that this team is going to go as far as David DeJulius takes them. If he's going to play like that, and if he's going to play the way that he's played these last 2 games, the rest of this season and next year is going to be special.
Yeah, no question. And the other thing, too, I was really concerned this game with fatigue. It was 31-23 at halftime, and I thought the team was playing pretty well, all things considered. And I was worried about second half. We would catch a point where guys would get fatigued, we did miss some free throws down the stretch. I think Micah missed 2 in a row. Jeremiah missed 1. There was some, free throw, some mental fatigue there. But I tell you, I think we saw something. I want you to touch upon this. Starting with the Temple game, I think bleeding into the Tulane game, we saw something we didn't see before, and that was that toughness and grit.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I think that, and this is just me being an observer because David hasn't said that, John hasn't said this, but I think when something you love and something that's so near and dear to your heart is taken away from you, you gain a stronger appreciation for it and of it. And I think what we're seeing from this team, like you said, that grit, that determination, that feistiness that, frankly, this program has been for the last 30, 40 years, we didn't see that early on from them. We didn't see that toughness. We've seen it these past 2 games. And you don't want to – it's a small sample size, so you don't want to put too much stock in it. But we are seeing just a different brand of basketball from this team. You're diving for loose balls, and we're just they're locked in defensively. And I mean, they had Forrester on Temple. He got in foul trouble because we were being the aggressor, and we put him there. And when guys are being the aggressor, and then look, David DeJulius was being more aggressive than we've seen from him all season. If he's the guy that's your engine, and he's the leader, and he's the point guard, everyone's going to follow with him. And then you got Keith Williams in the Tulane game that did the same thing. That's contagious. So I just think we're seeing a different brand of basketball because when these guys weren't able to have it for so long and they're just itching to get back on the court, to finally have that opportunity, I think they gained a better appreciation of it, and we're seeing it. We're seeing it directly on the court with just a different brand of basketball by this team.
Yeah, and I want to jump into, and I want to put a microscope on this Tulane game. And once again, this segment is sponsored by the College of Arts and Sciences at the University of Cincinnati. And looking at this Tulane game, talk a little bit about the play of Keith Williams.
Keith was Keith. Keith was the player that we've seen flashes of this season. He was the preseason first-team all-conference selection against Tulane. He was the guy that said, hey, get on my back, I got us. I'm not letting us lose this game. After not playing for 25 days and to stealing a win in Philadelphia, we didn't come down to New Orleans to lose this game. And so we saw Keith, that senior leader, just put the team on his back. He put up 20 big points. They needed every one of them, and he scored his 1,000th career point, which is insane. When you think about he's only the 54th player in the history of this program to score 1,000 points. There's so many guys, as who have come through here who haven't surprisingly done that. But to see
I feel like there was 50 during Huggins' time alone.
You know what I mean?
Like that,
100%. 100%. There was 50 on the 2000 squad, I think. It's Keith, to see him play as well as he did. There was a stretch in the second half where he scored 9 straight points by himself. Keith is a special player. I'm not breaking news here. He's a guy who's a super athletic guy. He can score with ease. I think for him, he shouldn't even worry about the offensive side of the ball because that's just easy for him. His strength is, being that lockdown defender, being that super athletic guy on the defensive end, being that leader, doing the things where he can guard the other team's best player. Staying out of foul trouble, playing smart and effective defense without picking up fouls, picking up big steals and blocks and being aggressive. And then once he gets on the other side of the football, that stuff, or the other side of the basketball, the other side of the court.
He can play football too.
He probably could. He'd be a mean safety, bro. And then put him at receiver on it. He's just such a freak athlete. But he's special, man. And to see that, if you can have David DeJulius playing the way he has been playing, and then have Keith, like I said, stay out of foul trouble, play effectively on the defensive side as he's capable of doing, and then the offense. Brandon said, look, when he's our age playing in the YMCA league, he's going to score 1,000 points in that league too because he's just that gifted of a scorer.
Don't matter where he's playing, he's going to drop.
You know what I mean? No matter.
Yeah,
rec league, church league, whatever. But he's a special player, and I think we saw that against Tulane. We saw him in his element. We saw him not overexert himself. He was just playing I think you said, you and I were talking, you were like, they were just hooping. Like, I think the key to this team sometimes is, Brandon might just got to get out of the way a little bit, not to say he's in the way, but just say, hey, guys, put everything to the side and just go hoop. Just hoop. Like, I know it's a crazy time and you got this to think about and you got this and you're thinking about this and that and that and that. Just go hoop. And I think that's what we saw from Keith in against Tulane, and that's what we saw against David Julius against Temple. And it's to see that from your two guys who are the engines of this team. It's really good to see that, especially after the 25-day layoff.
Yeah, and I want to touch upon something you were talking about with Keith, and he's such an elite scorer. And I've always thought that Coach Brandon would do wonders with him, and I think obviously still season left, I still think he could do a lot for Keith and helping him on the offensive end from a standpoint of this. I think Keith is so talented and athletic on the offensive end. He kind of gets caught in a space that Russell Westbrook does sometimes. He overcomplicates things. And, I always tell kids, that I work with basketball, it's not like, especially on the offensive end, it's not like diving. In diving, the more creative and flips and stuff you do, you get more points. In basketball, you don't. You're getting 2 or 3. Yeah. And you know what I'm saying? And sometimes Keith is in a diving competition. He makes it super complicated, but when he keeps it simple and just lets his supreme athleticism take over, he's definitely special. And I want to segue into another player that is so very special, and that is Tari. Speak about Tari and the game he had against Tulane.
Tari, man. Tari, like, they were joking with us, David, Keith, early on that, hey, Tari may not be here very long, and you see how special he is. It's just a true freshman. He look, man, this time last year he was dominating high school kids in Washington State, and now he's here on this stage. He gets 13, 9, 5, 4, and 3 in his sleep. I mean, it's just he rolls out of bed and can give you 13 and 9, and it's just his athleticism, his length, and he's so smart. He's such a smart basketball player, and that really shows on the defensive side with his weak side blocks and his rotations. He has good instincts, and he's just one of those guys who gets it. But then he has those freshman moments that are to be expected, of course. Mm-hmm. And I think what we're seeing when he talked, because I asked him after the Tulane game, what's happening with this team? Because these games, you were losing these games, 2 months ago. You couldn't, if UC was in the game, a one-possession game with 1 minute to go, they were losing. Now they're figuring out ways to win, and he just said experience, and you got to remember, he doesn't have that. He there's no experience. He can't pull from, hey, this happened. No, he's learning on the fly. And I think what we're seeing from this team that is also still very young and figuring out their roles amidst of a 25-day layoff is that as they have these different experiences, when they're put in these positions again, they're like, oh, remember this? Remember that? Remember that this happened before? Hey, let's do this time around. They've won 2 straight games that came down to the final possession. And I think that speaks of the growth and the maturity. Look, man, bad teams figure out ways to lose. Good teams figure out ways to win. And I think we're seeing this team gradually turn into a more mature, a better team, a more well-rounded team, and just a team that's figuring out what the hell they're doing out there, and it's paid off with 2 straight victories.
And it seems like they're making a conscious effort, specifically in the Tulane game, to get the ball to Chris Vogt down low. And obviously there was a size advantage there, but it was good to see Chris get a little bit of confidence.
Yeah, it was good to see Chris to get that. I mean, and you have to take advantage of that size when you're playing against a team like Tulane that's super small, and I think their biggest guy is 6'8". They start 4 guards. I think one benefit of the layoff and the state of this team right now is that they can't get out in transition. Like the biggest strength offensively, I think, for this team is taking the ball out of the net and going. Getting the freak athlete that Keith is and Tari and David, get them out, Mikey Saunders, get them out going offensively quick, and creating offense that way. well, look, Chris can't play that way. Like, that's not Chris's strength. Like, he's a methodical, like, let's call it what it is. He's slow, okay?
Yep.
He's a slow guy, and his strength isn't transition. But because they haven't had the numbers that they're accustomed to, because guys like Mamadou and Zach Harvey haven't been able to get on the court, because they've had to start Rob Banks a walk-on, because they've had to play Sam Martin a walk-on, the numbers aren't there, so they have to reel things back and say, all right, let's slow up the pace so that we don't freaking exhaust ourselves and we can't fit to get on the court. But I think that's benefited Chris because it works into his style of play, so they're able to slow things down, put Chris down low, take advantage of his size, have him work around the rim. And it's just been nice to see, I think for his confidence, a guy who was an all-conference selection and has had great games here, to get pulled from the starting lineup and to not have the season I'm sure he expected, to see him have a couple games where, Brandon was running plays for him and wanting to get him involved and wanting to use his strengths to help them win. I think that was huge, huge, huge for his confidence.
And I think that you're exactly right. And you could see, so one time I believe Chris caught the ball, he turned, he got an and one, and you could see his teammates so excited for him. Whereas if you go back to prior to the pause, sometimes they would throw him the ball, he'd lose it, and guys would turn around and throw their hands down, and Chris would see that. He would see the energy from his teammates, and now he's seeing a different energy. So hopefully that helps. Now, you mentioned Sam Martin. And Coach Brandon did something very strategic when he kind of benched some guys. It could have been a result of, a little bit of fatigue, and he was upset with the turnovers and defense, and put Sam Martin and Banks in at the same time. And a crucial point in the second half, I believe Sam played like 4 minutes. Rob Banks played like 6 minutes, and they played solid minutes. Sam Martin had an assist to Tari. I believe it was an and one, and then he took a charge down the other end. And I think that kind of changed the momentum of the game. Yeah,
I mean, you're a little biased because he was right in the seat that you were standing in, being that former walk-on that, your number wasn't called often, but when it was, you got to go out there and perform. And he did that, and, just like you used to, man. He did that, and he's a guy that Brandon, just like Banks, I mean, these guys are asked to play just as hard as everybody else, knowing they're not going to get a lot of time. Like knowing that their name isn't going to be in the paper, knowing that they're not going to be on ESPN, knowing that they're not going to get the highlights that some of these other guys are. But in this state, in this world that we're in, you never know when you're going to be asked to come in and provide something. To have Rob Banks come out and then play quality minutes, to have Sam Martin come out. I mean, Sam wasn't even – he was going to be I think he was going to be overseas or something for school, so I don't think they even expected to have him. But because of COVID, he's now playing this season.
Right.
It's so crazy. Like everything is like, as I'm talking to you, I'm like, what the heck is going on? But no, man, they could not take care of the basketball, and I don't know if it was, like you said, I don't know if it was fatigue. I don't know if it was just everything mentally going on right now for them. But he goes to a lineup that had 2 walk-ons, 2 freshmen, and a sophomore. And they turned the ball over 3 times the rest of the way. I mean, it really changed the trajectory of that game. And you do need to credit the 2 walk-ons who came in and logged quality minutes. And it was a cool moment to see those 2 guys play extended time, and they needed those minutes, and they definitely contributed to those victories. So salute to them.
Yeah, and that funny story. So I actually texted Sam before the Tulane game, and I said good luck, and he goes, yeah, hopefully we can get another W. And then right after the game was over, within 15 minutes or whenever Coach Brandon got finished talking, I got a text from Sam, and he goes, little did we know that I would be in the game in the second half. And I'm like, man, Coach might have to start you next game. He's like, I don't know about all that. But
Sam was hooping. Shout out to Sam. He was hooping. I love it.
But, the thing with Sam, I've known Sam since he was, just probably 9, 10 years old, watched him play high school basketball. And like almost everybody that's on that roster can play. They might not be able to play to the level of a Keith Williams or a Tari, but they all can play. And Huggins was really good at this, and that is if you play hard with a lot of energy, usually good things are going to happen.
Yep.
You know, you might have something, you know, bad happen here, but if you play hard and lock in on defense, good things are going to happen.
Yep.
Hey, let's jump into this Memphis game here. I'm very intrigued with this Memphis game. So now it's like get a win at Temple, get a win at Tulane, and this will be the 5th road game, right, against Memphis?
Fifth road game. Has never happened in the history of this conference. This is a conference record.
Wow. So what intrigues me so much about this game, and Memphis is 12-6. They've won their last 3 games.
Yep.
You know, I think Bearcat fans are excited again, maybe a little too excited. You know, sometimes you get ahead of the skis a little bit. But I'm interested to see how we come out and react. I wonder if we're going to continue that confidence and build upon that, or are we going to see what we saw prior to the 25-day pause? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, this game's going to be interesting because, like you said, it's the 5th straight road game for them. And look, Memphis isn't Temple. Memphis isn't Tulane. Like this is a different level of basketball. You know, Penny's got athletes everywhere. He's got scores everywhere. You know, one of their best players, Lomax, his numbers are ridiculous, and he didn't even start last game. So they're so deep. And so how much stock we should be putting in these 2 victories, and they're important. I don't want to diminish what this team has done these last 2 games, especially considering what they've gone through in that 25-day layoff. Those 2 games are valuable, and to see them pull them out is even more impressive. But we're stepping it up a notch. We're having to play this Tigers team it seems that they found their groove. They're in this stretch now where they're playing good basketball. They've won 3 straight. There was high expectations for this program coming into the season. You know, Penny is killing it on the recruiting trail, getting guys in. They gave him a brand new, shiny new deal because Memphis is liking the direction that Penny's putting that program in. So this is going to be a unique test to see how much improvement has happened. And we'll see. You know, I don't want to say, you know, expectations or anything like that. I think if you're Brandon, you know, let's continue to show that toughness. Let's continue to show that grit. Let's make them play the style of ball that we want to play. I don't think you want to get into an athletic fest with Memphis. I don't think that's what you want to do. You want to, you know, keep them, you know, grounded. Don't let them start flying around the gym. Play tough defense. David DeJulius, continue to take care of the basketball, make sound decisions, get everybody involved. When your shot's there, be aggressive, take it. Tari, do your thing, stay aggressive. He's going to play against guys who are as athletic as him, are as tall as him, are as long and lanky as him. You know, can you stay aggressive and continue to make the sound decisions? Jeremiah Davenport, Tulane was not your strong point. Like when you leave this university, that's not going to be on your highlight reel. We're going to need the Jeremiah that can stay mentally locked in, mentally grounded. His biggest strength is his excitement and his energy and but then that can be a detriment as well. So they're going to need Jeremiah to show, you know, all right, I'm mature, I can handle this, I can So this is a new test and a different test for them, and I'm curious to see how they'll respond after these last 2 games.
Yeah, and I want to touch upon Penny real quick. You talked about his new deal. I think Penny Hardaway is, oh my God, he's so good for college basketball right now. Yep. You know, and I think, and I don't mean this in the wrong way, but there's a lot of stale in college basketball. Yep. And, you know, he brings a lot of good flair. He's got the name power. You know, he's on the sideline rocking the newest shoes, which I love. He's got the style down, got the recruits. And you know what I love about it as well? I love seeing a former player that played at their school coaching there having success as well. I love to see that blueprint a lot more at other schools.
I was such a big Penny fan. Like, gosh, I mean, I'm sure you were too. Like,
oh yeah,
when Jordan retired, And now you got that Orlando Magic team with Penny and Shaq and Nick Anderson and Dennis Scott and Horace Grant came over. Like, it was just, that team. And then you got the Little Penny commercials and Tyra Banks. And I'm like, I was all about Little Penny. But I completely agree with you. And it's funny, like, you said you think John Brennan is the man for the job. I completely agree with you. I love John Brennan. I think he is the guy that should be leading this program. Having said that, I didn't want UC to hire him. I wanted UC to hire Nick Van Exel because I wanted him to have the same impact or a similar impact that Penny is having at Memphis, that all-world player who, has limited coaching experience but has shown that he's capable. Bring him in, let the recruits see a former player leading the team and younger black guy, still connected with this generation. Because I think that's Penny's biggest strength is being able to connect with these young players. These young guys may not know Penny from 94, 95, 96, but they know Penny. They know that he was a beast. Their parents know that Penny was a beast. But I don't want to. But I was like, man, I think Nick would be dope if we brought Nick in. I think But I do think John is a good player, a great fit. But I agree. I think he's good for the sport, and I think he brings fresh air during this time where we desperately need it. And I think Memphis is one of those programs, as Cincinnati is. It's college basketball is great when they're great, right? Like when Cincinnati's balling and Cincinnati's in the top 10 and a perennial power, and they have a guy who's in the Player of the Year conversation, Steve Logan, Kenyon Martin, Danny Fortune, boom, 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 boom. Like when that's happening, college basketball is just better. You have your Dukes and your Kentuckys and your Kansases, and they're all down this year, right? Which is insane.
Right.
But you need that other side of the spectrum where, UC's a top 10 program ever. That's, and not just AP said that, CBS said that. When they're at that level, it's a special feeling. And Memphis too. Memphis has a storied tradition, and to see Penny be able to come back to Memphis and have the impact that he's having, I think is really dope, especially for me who grew up with him and super big fan. I hope they lose on Thursday, but I'm just saying it's good to see him back.
And he's such a really, really good dude. Got a chance to know him a little bit over the last couple years. Actually, I first ran into Penny. I was in Orlando, and I was at the AAU National Tournament with some of our teams.
Okay.
And he had a team at the time. And he finished coaching, and everybody's like crowded around the court watching his team play, and then he kind of has his own security and all that and gets kind of ushered off. And so I watched his team play. I'd never met him before, and for some reason I went somewhere and I came back to meet a buddy to watch a game, and Penny was like standing literally right next to me, and I turned, I'm like, Penny, and he like looked at me, he's like, what's up? And I was like, oh, man. So I told him a common friend we have, and he just started talking to me. It was really, really cool. And then when he took over the job at Memphis, after every game, when he played at Cincinnati as a coach of Memphis, I would go down and talk to him, and he was so cool. I said, hey, man, I got a couple buddies. Would you mind meeting him and taking pictures? This was after we beat them. The Bearcats beat them at UC. Yeah. And he was like, yeah, sure. He was like, come on, let's do it. He was just as nice as could be to everybody. So that makes it even that much easier to cheer for him. And I root for guys like Patrick Ewing at Georgetown.
Absolutely.
Even Aaron at Temple. I mean, to see him following, his mentor and father figure in John Chaney, man, I hope he does really, really well there.
I completely agree, man. It's just these are great stories. It's great to see former players get opportunities to coach at their alma maters and to put those programs in the right direction. I think it's a bridge that you want to keep up. It's huge for recruiting. It's huge for the history of the program. It's huge. I mean, it's great to see that. And man, like you said, it's really easy to root for those guys.
Yeah, no question. And this segment was sponsored by the College of Arts and Sciences at the University of Cincinnati. And now it's time.
Shout out to them. Hold on. We can shout out to the College of Arts and Sciences at UC. They gave me my degree. I appreciate them. Holla at them.
We both are graduates of
Love it.
College of Arts and Sciences. So big shout out to them, and I appreciate and I'm going to actually do an episode with some folks from the College of Arts and Sciences, Lisa Holstrom and a couple folks, and kind of talk about what goes on behind the scenes. So we see Atari Eason and David DeJulius, Keith Williams on the court, but what happens when they're away from the court with the classroom? What do they need to do to be eligible, get their degree? Guys that maybe go off and play pro that come back, Dermar Johnson, Steve Logan, guys have come back and gotten their degree. We're going to kind of talk about that. It's really, they've got some cool stories. So
nice, very cool.
I'm going to have them on. So, but you know what time it is, man? It is time. It is officially time that we go back and forth about our list for the top 5 greatest rappers of all time. And once again, you're listening to the Bearcat Basketball Podcast presented by Healthcare Management Group. And it's time we start. Now here's how I want to do it. I would like to go back and forth. So I would like to start at 5. You go first with your number 5, and then I'll do my number 5. Okay?
Interesting. So we're going to start at 5 and work up. Because you know who my 1 is. You know who my 1 is.
And that's why I want to save 1 for last, and we kind of go back and forth because I think we'll obviously intertwine at that point. I don't know your 5 through 2. I don't know who that is. So this is going to be interesting. So let's start with number 5, Keith Jenkins, greatest rapper of all time.
So first off, real quick, let me just say, like, the guys who aren't in it I'm gonna leave off so many names. Pac, not on my list. Eminem, not on my list. Black Thought, Royce, Wayne. Like, there are so many guys. Rakim. Like, there are just amazing. LL Cool J deserves a nod somewhere. He's not on mine, but if someone put him on theirs, I'm not mad at that. My 5th greatest rapper of all time in the history of hip-hop music ever to ever do it, ever, is Scarface.
Ooh, Mr. Scar. Okay, tell me why.
I think when it comes to Southern hip-hop, it doesn't get any better than him. Mm-hmm. His early albums, his last albums, he's a guy, in my opinion, like Jay, who, shout out to Brad Jordan. That's his real name. He's a guy who sounds as effortless and as fresh and as unique and as sharp as the first day we heard him. His stories, his flow, his lyrics, he's incomparable. And he's always been amazing for me. His classic albums are they're ridiculous. And he was the Ghetto Boys, as much as, those 3 were just hugely different and their personalities were massive. He stood out as head and shoulders above them lyrically, and he's done that, every time out. And I think he's, in my opinion, I think he's the most underrated rapper of all time. But when you dissect his catalog and really get into his lyrics, I think Scarface is a guy who is amazing, and he's my 5th greatest rapper of all time.
And I actually think that's a good one. He's not in my top 5, but I think he's a good one. If you look at some of the great rappers of all time, they do point to early Ghetto Boys music as an influence for them. And like you said, there is no question, undoubtedly, that Scarface was the Ghetto Boys, is the Ghetto Boys. When you listen to a Ghetto Boy song, of course you're waiting for the comedy of Bushwick Bill, but at the end of the day, it's about Scarface's verse. So I agree with that. Jumping into my number 5, and let me preface my list with this. Like you said, there are going to be some folks that are left off of this list that I think are great lyricists and great artists. However, I base my top 5 greatest rappers on a complete body of work, okay? Their complete body of work. And some people's work I feel is incomplete, lackluster, or what have you. So number 5 is my man, since we're using real names, James Todd Smith, a.k.a. LL Cool J, Ladies Love Cool James, Legend in Leather, whatever you want to call him. For me, growing up, there was the first big rap star to me was LL Cool J. Yeah. In my neighborhood, we used to go play basketball on Reading Road at a court called Sugar and Spice. And when we finished playing, this guy, Mike Grace, had this big boom box, and he would play radio, and people would bust out the cardboard box, and we were breakdancing. And we used to joke, we used to listen to LL Cool J's music so much that you remember on the cassette tapes, the words were smeared off. Like, the words were gone. We used to joke that LL Cool J was like breathing heavy after we finished playing. We would play it over and over. And if you look at it from radio, Bigger and Deffer, Walking with the Panther, Mama Said Knock You Out, 14 Shots, always consistently, I think he had hits. He was always reinventing himself. And you got to think about this too. He made the phrase GOAT famous.
Yeah.
If you really go back and think about it. Which is so commonly used now. And I think also another thing that's important in the body of work of LL Cool J is he is battle tested. And when you look at hip hop music, Keith, hip hop music is, as Jay-Z has stated many, many times, it's a young person's sport. Mm-hmm. And you're effectively, when you get older, you're fighting the younger generation. They are the culture at that point. And if you really think about it, when Cannabis came up, and he's looked upon as this great battle rapper, and Cannabis and him have that battle, and Cannabis makes Second Round Knockout, which is one of the great diss songs. He's got Mike Tyson on it, and he's dissing LL Cool J. Cannabis had a line in that song. I don't know if you remember this, but Cannabis in his diss to LL Cool J, he said, 99% of your fans were high heels.
High heels, yes, sir.
You remember that? And
yes,
at that
sir.
time, LL had transitioned into making the poppy kind of love raps, and Cannabis was right. But
wait, though.
I'm coming with it.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm coming with it. Hold on, let me come with it. Okay. And everybody wrote LL off. LL came back with Jack the Ripper Strikes Back. Yep. And in my opinion, he had arguably one of the great comeback lines of all time to Cannabis, who was an upstart rapper. Yeah. He said 99% of your fans don't exist. And I'm just telling you, that's what you were about to get to. Yeah. I'm gonna tell you, when we heard that line, we all were listening to Jack the Ripper in my apartment, and I will never forget this. We all went, "This dude is unbelievable."
Different. Yep.
Number 5 greatest rapper for me, LL Cool J.
I'm not mad at you. Like I told you earlier, I didn't even know you were gonna say LL. If whoever puts LL in their top 5, I can't. He's not in mine, but I'm not arguing that. Like LL, what he's been able to do off wax, on wax, like he was Jay-Z before Jay. Like he was.
No question.
He was the first.
Well said.
He was the first superstar, like you said. Like I mean, there was Curtis Blow and the members of Run DMC and Run and Rev Run, but Jay was Def Jam, but before Jay was Def Jam, LL was Def Jam. LL was he made Kango's like he made it. Oof. I mean, it's just I can't argue. That's a great decision. Great choice.
Yeah, man. Yep. Number 4.
Number 4 for me. I don't know how popular this one is, but I don't care. It's mine. I do what I want. 3 Stacks. Andre 3000. He is number 4 for me. He's on another planet as far as what he's able to do musically. And then every verse he has ever spewed, I just rewind over and over, and I'm just like, he said what? And to hear him talk about his creative process and how he's agonized over certain words and the order of words and the placement of words and just meticulous how he is, and he's just a genius, and his ability to take over records that where they're also filled with stars, and he shines even brighter than any of them. The International Players Anthem comes to mind. I love that song, but so I typed a text to a girl I used to see. That verse is, when you open the greatest moments in hip hop, that book, if it exists. If it doesn't, we need to figure out how to create it. But that when you turn to page 1 or whatever, I mean, it's in there. I mean, that verse is a moment in hip hop history, And I just think, and then, you know, we can talk about Outkast. I think Big Boy is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I think Andre made him look average, and that is no disrespect to Big Boy at all. No, I love Big Boy. Phenomenal, amazing. He deserves mention. But Andre is the reason why Outkast became a worldwide phenomenon in the late 90s and early 2000s because of his personality, his skills, his ability. The way that they were able to work off of each other was phenomenal. But, yeah, number 4, Andre 3 Stacks, amazing.
Yeah, and that's an interesting pick because I always tell my friends that I think one of the more genius things, I don't know if it was on purpose, but I think he's limited his content. So, you know, there's not a lot of Andre 3000 music out there. There's not, and if you think about it, like Lil Wayne has way too many freaking songs.
Yeah.
Like I can probably write a book on the whack Lil Wayne songs that he just shouldn't have done, but he just put out so much material, whereas Andre was so strategic. He was almost like Barry Sanders, where he gave you all this great, and he's like, I'm out.
Yep.
My decision.
Jim Brown,
I'll be back
Calvin Johnson. Yep, you're right. Yep, you're right.
I'll be back when I'm back. It is what it is. Love it. And I had, you know what's crazy about 3000 is I've had friends just like randomly meet him on the street or in the airport, and he's just like playing a flute or doing something. People send me pictures. Have you heard about this?
You know how many people have stories of just randomly running into 3 Stacks at a Hardee's or something, like just the most random stuff.
Crazy. Yeah.
And I love it. Yeah, no. I'm such a hip hop head, and he's one of those guys where, you know, I mean, I remember DJ Drama had a mixtape, and on it he had Big Boy, Dre, and Marsha did a song together, Marsha Ambrosius, who's a good friend of mine. And that song is stupid. I mean, like it's just. I mean, we could do we could erase the first hour of this podcast when we talk UC and just focus on this and just get into it. But like, I love it. No, Andre could be number 1, but the next 3 are ridiculous. He can't overtop those. He can't do it.
Okay. My number 4. The God MC, Rakim Allah, Rakim.
Love it.
And the reason I have Rakim at number 4, back again to, like I said, the body of work. If you look at Paid in Full, Follow the Leader, Let the Rhythm Hit Him, Don't Sweat the Technique, all those albums, to me, you know, I feel like he was way ahead of his time. Mm-hmm. It was like he was dropped from the 2000s into the 80s. And he was just, I remember as a young kid, so many of us wanted to be rappers. Like, we would all write raps, right? In a little notebook. You did the same thing. Yep. But when you heard a Rakim song, you just tore up your book and said, man, I can't do this. This dude's too good. What I loved about him, no gimmicks. He didn't have to cuss. And I think he did something that most people didn't do back then. You still there?
Yep, I'm here.
Oh, okay, I thought I lost you. He did something that most rappers didn't do back then, and that was he outshined the DJ. Mm-hmm. So if you go back in the history of rap, the DJ's name was always written first.
Absolutely.
Right? Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince.
Absolutely.
Right? It was, right? Eric B. and Rakim. He was one of the he outshined basically DJ Kool Herc was the person that kind of brought rap to the forefront, you know, in the Bronx, playing the, you know, music at the outdoor parks. Like, the DJ was the guy, and for him to be the guy that outshined the DJ and changed the culture of emceeing, in my opinion, he was that guy. And still today, in 2021, I can hear a Rakim song in a verse and just be like, man, it's not corny, it's not dated, it's just so timeless. So, number 4, Rakim.
Well said, brother. And if you, the next, at least 2 of the guys on my next list have said, not even probably all three, but they have said, Rakim, he's the reason why they do what they do. Like, he's the reason why they ended up being who they were. And Rakim changed hip hop, like, in the sense that before Rakim, and this is no disrespect to anybody before Rakim, but everyone had a certain flow, and hip hop sounded a certain way. When Rakim came out, wait, what? Like, he was different. He was the first like metaphor, heavy lyricism, like crisp, and then the sound sonically he was just different. Like the way that they were able to produce his records. But yeah, Rock. And then when he made that brief comeback, when he was with Aftermath for a second, and he made a couple appearances over there with Dre, like you said, bro, his vocals were just as fresh and just as sharp as they were in the late 80s. Just phenomenal.
And let me say one more quick thing, too. Growing up, I loved watching Showtime at the Apollo.
Yep.
And Showtime at the Apollo had many acts that came on and rocked the house. But what's crazy is there was a guy who, I don't remember the guy's name. I think he's since passed away, but he had pretty much from the beginning until the time of his death, he had been involved in, every act that was there at the Showtime at the Apollo. And he put Rakim's performance, he says, as a top 5 performance in the history of Showtime at the Apollo. He says, I have never seen a crowd react to anyone like they reacted to him. He wasn't dancing. He wasn't wearing colorful outfits. He had on the same outfit that probably 80% of the guys in the audience had on. The same. And he goes, that place went nuts. So,
love it.
All right, enough on Rakim. You're number 3.
Number 3 is the notorious one, B.I.G. This one's tough in the sense that he was just taken too soon. He was taken way too soon, and like I feel like we were robbed of just even more greatness. I think Biggie, his wordplay, his flow, he is just his ability to be versatile and talk about different type of topics. His a way to he could hop on a song with Total and then do the joint with the Bone Thugs and Harmony and switch up his flow entirely different and be able to hang with that double time rhyme scheme and flow. I just think Biggie. Jay's number 1, and I'll tell you who my number 2 is. We talked about Jay before, but without Big, there's no Jay. I think Big's death, unfortunately, gave birth to Jay. But I think Big literally, I think he also took rap to a different level. Like the greatest in the game heard Big's latest record and said, "Wait, he said what? He did what?" And so I think I put Pun in this category too. Pun's not in my top 5, but Pun is a guy who I believe Big Pun was tremendous, but we were just robbed. We never really truly got to see how great he could have been. I just think Big was phenomenal, and even the small sample size that we were able to get, I'll put that up against anything anybody ever created, and so he's my number 3.
Well, I'm going to agree with you. So my number 3 is Christopher Wallace. The only Christopher we acknowledge is Wallace. And I'm going to piggyback what you said. If you really look at his 2 albums, and when I prefaced this whole thing, I said I look at the complete body of work. However, I think Big's an exception because if you look at Ready to Die and Life After Death, you're talking about home run and home run.
100%.
So, right? So he's on court. They weren't triples. Those were home runs. Yep. This dude did a double album. And you know how hard it is for a hip-hop artist to make a double album that people are going to listen to both CDs and they have, or I'm dating myself, but the CDs, and they're going to have that type of impact. Yeah. I think he was on course to, if you think about what that third and fourth album, if he were alive, would sound like, and just the evolution of his flow would have been unbelievable. And I think he was on course to be definitely one of our GOATs. I always say this. My aunt, who she passed away, she used to have this giant green Cadillac, and she would pick me up from school, and this was like ninth grade, and she would pick me up in this huge Cadillac, and we would have to go on 71 for 15 or 20 minutes. And we would be on 71, and she'd be cruising like 80 miles an hour. And that thing was just bouncing, and it was so smooth. That is big on a track.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
You know what I mean? Every time I hear him, I feel like I'm in my aunt's Cadillac going 80 on the highway, feeling like I'm only going 50 and I'm cruising. No, we are going. His flow is just, I don't think anybody has rode a track quite like him. And I'll tell you one thing that I thought was genius, whether it was Puffy's idea or a combination, was he kind of took that Heavy D thing and ran with it, that big sexy style. Yep. You know, Heavy D was the first dude to say, you know what, I'm a little overweight, but I'm sexy. And Big kind of had his own way. He wasn't dancing around, but you know, he wanted to be that big sexy. And I'll tell you one last quick story with Big. We were on spring break. I just finished. I can't remember who we played that year in NCAA tournament, but we lost. I went to spring break. We were down in Florida, in Panama City, and we were on the Panama City Strip. I'm with my buddy Sam Dunn, Matt Burke, and a bunch of guys. B.I.G.'s album, Life After Death, just dropped. We walked all the way down to the record store in Florida to purchase it, come back. We're playing it in our little hotel room. Hours later, we come out on the Strip where it's almost nighttime, it's getting dark, and all these cars are like jam-packed. There's a big traffic jam on the Strip. Every single car, Keith, I'm not making this up, is playing Hypnotized. And it's at a different point of the, and all you hear is boom, 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 and then one car's going by, hot so good in you ever.
I love it.
And we're like, this is a hip hop moment.
Yep.
So my number 3, Big. So
I love that we had the same one. I love it. I love that number 3 lined up. I love it.
For sure. Number 2.
And I love that you said Big was as smooth as your aunt's green Cadillac on 70. Like, who's the writer here? Like, fam, like, yo, the metaphor there is insane. I love it. I love his flow. Is like my aunt's green Cadillac. All right. So number 2 for me is Nasir Jones. Nas is he's number 2. I mean, Jay's 1. And I think it's Jay and everybody else. But what Nas does at number 2 for me is, so Rakim was a phenomenal storyteller. Slick Rick, phenomenal storyteller. I can name several others. Nas was that and times a million. I've had fights, and I go back and forth about the albums. Between Illmatic and It Was Written. Illmatic, it changed everything that we had ever known about the genre. Like, I mean, it just, so we can create a hip-hop album that sounds like this. And then I'm not from Queensbridge. I've never been to Queensbridge in my life. I've been to Queens. I've driven through the boroughs. I've never been in that hood and in that project and experienced how that. Bro, when you listen to Illmatic, you know exactly, like, it's like I'm sitting on the stoop, like, watching everything flow right by me.
Sure. You're gonna hit the elevator, right?
You know what I mean? Yep. Like 100%. And so, but I've had arguments about Illmatic versus It Was Written because, you know, my thing with Nas is, as great as he was on Illmatic, It Was Written, his abilities on that album, and then the joint he did with Dr. Dre, he changed the game with the single with Lauryn Hill, of course. The Message is one of my favorite songs of all time. He's so sharp, and his mind, his intellect. and he just raps better than you. Like, I'm sorry, like he's just better than you.
Right.
So yeah, Nas is number 2, and he's one of those guys that, I think one thing, and we'll get into Jay because I think we're both on the same. I don't want to overstep your number 2, but the reason why Jay is above Nas for me, for several reasons, but one key thing is, I think Jay's ear was better, and we'll get to that as far as like beat selection and stuff, because I think that's one thing that held Nas back certain times. Is I just think sometimes he just had the wrong beat. Like, why did you choose yo rhyme is dope and your flow, your 16 is crazy, but that beat just doesn't fit your style, your flow, and but having said that, you can throw Nas on anything and he'll murder it, and so Nas is a special MC, and he's the second greatest ever.
So when I was young, my friend Damon Martin and Darius, we skipped school when Illmatic came out. And I admit this, we skipped school to actually listen to the album. How crazy is that? And I'm gonna tell you, I will never forget this. We were in my light blue Honda Civic hatchback, and I had a house speaker in the back, mom's old house speaker.
I love it.
Put the tape in, and man, first you got the train tracks, and then when that beat kicks in, and then Nas goes, rappers are monkey flipping with the funky rhythm, I'll be kicking, musician, inflicting composition of pain. I'm like, Scarface, man. We looked at each other, and that's back when you had to rewind it, and Darius goes, rewind it. We couldn't rap Genius. We couldn't rap Genius that stuff. And we had to rewind it. Bullet holes left in my peepholes. I'm suited up in street clothes. Hand me a 9 and all the feet foes. I'm like, what? My stilo without the airplay. I'm like, man, so.
Bruh. Different.
Different. My number 2, and the reason I have this guy at number 2 is because his music had a certain impact on my life, and that is Tupac. So, ironically, I didn't put Tupac at 2 just because of Tupac, but I just think from a cultural impact, what he had on hip hop is just it's unmatched. I do think when people do pass away, their music gets elevated. I mean, like Pop Smoke passed away. I had never heard of Pop Smoke prior to him passing away, and then his song shoots to number 1. I hear it on the radio all the time, so that often helps. But with Pac, obviously, he had a body of work prior to his death that was unbelievable. What I loved about him, I don't think at that time I had ever heard anybody rap with that much emotion that you really felt. Like, it was so authentic. And, a lot of times rappers kind of lie in their raps, and we know that. But I felt every word Pac was talking about. And here's the other genius, and Quincy Jones said this. And Pac dated, Quincy's daughter, and Quincy Jones said in an interview that the genius of Pac was he made a gangster track to get all the hood dudes to buy into what he's saying, right? So he would get them to come in. He'd get his arms around them, and then he'd hit you. The next song would be a message. Brenda's got a baby. Keeping your head up. But if you notice, go look at his track releases. It's gangster hit, message. He was like, it was all part of a plan. He goes, what he was doing was genius. And to me, every Pac album was so very different to me. It just was a different part of his life from New York to L.A. and it was just so different. But what album did it for me, and I'll leave it on this, and we'll jump into Jay-Z. The album that did it for me was Machiavelli. And I was at UC, and the Machiavelli album had come out, and it became the soundtrack to our basketball team. You can ask Kenyon Martin, Pete Michael, ask any of those guys. It was all about Machiavelli, man. We were bumping that. And that just became it just became the album, and that album kind of allowed me to dive into his other work, and so I've become just such a huge Pac fan because of that. So that's my number 2. Let's jump into 1, man. Let's talk about Jay. I'll let you go first.
Real quick on Pac, because I feel like I love Pac. Obviously, he's not in my top 5. The reason why is because, you know, what Pac had in emotion and delivery and strength, like his vocal strength and his ability to make you believe, I felt he lacked in lyrical content, you know, metaphors, flows, like for me, what I felt the reason why Nas would be number 2, for instance, is because I felt what he had, where Pac lacked, that's where Nas gave me, but then he would also give me, Nas and Jay, what Pac could. I love Pac, and that's a really tough, because I have debates about it, and I love Pac, and I think people like, well, you don't like, man, you hating on Pac? I love Pac, but I am a very lyrical, and again, these are all like subjective. Like we all have our own opinions, and just because he's not in my top 5 doesn't mean I don't like him. But like Hail Mary he's got timeless songs that are just like you said, you could put them on today and they sound like they were just created. You know, Keep Your Head Up is just, you know, it's a song that his versatility was special. His ability to create Keep Your Head Up and to create Hit 'Em Up and to completely flip, and you know what Dre did for him on California Love. My album is you know, the Me Against the World album, and I was just, you know, All Eyes on Me. You know, Machiavelli was special, but the All Eyes on Me double, and that was like almost like an unfair greatest hits, because he went over to Death Row, and they just took everything they were working on and said, yo, Pac just came home. Here's our best stuff. Not taking anything away from Pac. Put your best verses on these, and we're gonna make this a double. And that album was like a special. That deserves like a spot in the own hallway of the Hip Hop Museum of just how they were able to create and manifest that special product. So shout out to Pac. And again, a guy, he created so much music while he was here. We almost don't feel, you know, we don't feel like he was taken too soon, because he was such a monster with his work ethic that he created so much content while he was here. But again, he's one of those guys too. Had we been able to see him grow, there's no telling, where he could have taken it. So yeah. Well said. I think he would have been an activist today. I think he would have been very involved in a lot of different movements to phenomenal actor. Phenomenal act, like just special. For me, like he's bigger than just a hip hop artist, and his what could have been his impact. Like he could have been on the front lines of as we're looking at all of these different political movements and social change and social justice and strives for equality. You know, I think he had the potential to be, you know, a monster and a huge force in what we're seeing today. Like, I think like he could have used his power for so much good. It's just unfortunate that at the end there how it ended. But, you know, wow.
No question.
Wow.
No question.
All right. Jay.
Let's jump into Hove. H-O.
Jay. Hove, gosh, man. The first time I heard Hove, it was either the joint with Foxy off of the Nutty Professor soundtrack, or it was I'm feeling it. It was either that. I can't remember like the first time, but I was hooked. I mean, because I'm feeling it might have been the first video that I saw of his, but I remember I bought the album. I bought Volume 1, and I heard Where I'm From, and just like what Nas could do for me, you know, being at Queensbridge, I've never been to Marcy in my life. And I'm like, whoa, I know what Marcy's like now. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. And so Volume 1, I heard that, and I'm like, oh wait, this is his second album. This isn't his first. So then I had to go back and get Reasonable Doubt because I missed Reasonable Doubt. Reasonable Doubt may be the greatest hip hop album ever created. It's what I love about hip hop music, especially, and going back and listening to it, is listening to it today, and I gauge like how fresh does it sound. And that album today, when you put it in, you're just like, man, we could have created this yesterday. It's just that sonically clean and crisp.
Sure.
And the greatness about Jay is his verse. Let's start from 95, 96 on. He has consistently sounded sharp, fresh, clean. You can't like his verse on. He had I think it's a game. Beanie Siegel, the Reason album. There was a song with Freeway, Beanie, Young Chris, and Jay. Jay's verse on that is just it's one of those where you just keep rewinding it, and you're like every time you listen to it, you're like, oh wait, he said this, and then he said this. Oh wait, he said that. Oh, I didn't catch that. Then oh wait, he said. I just, and that's been Jay's music every time out. And you could say Volume 3 was a bad album, Kingdom Come was a bad album, Holy Grail may have been a bad album. I'll put those 3 albums up against your greatest albums and let's talk. Because
for sure.
Like you know what I'm saying? Like his worst albums are probably better than your best. Okay? So it's just Jay has been consistent. His impact on the culture. At one point, we were all wearing, baggy jeans and huge throwback jerseys with 4XTs and white Air Force Ones. Why? Because Jay. And then Jay was like, you know what? I'm switching it up. I'm gonna wear. I'm taking the throwbacks off. I'm a little older. I'm gonna wear button ups. I'm gonna wear fitted. I'm gonna put cufflinks on my. Now I'm walking around with cufflinks on, with looking around stupid. But this is what I'm. Jay said it's what we were. And so I just Jay was just his impact on the culture. We talked about LL. What LL did, Jay-Z did that times a million. What Rakim did, LL took it, and then Nas grabbed it, and then Jay said, nah, move. And then I still tell everybody talk about Ether. Oh, Jay-Z got killed. No. Ether was like when you were in the backyard and you with your boys and y'all capping back and forth. Yo, your head's so big. That Ether was great. Don't get me wrong. It ain't messed with Takeover. Takeover was a lyrical masterpiece.
That was surgery.
It was surgical. It was absolutely surgical. It was facts, and he's just a special part of the culture. And I could go on and on about the blueprint and what that did. And I've had debates. I think Eminem might have got him, but to say that is crazy because Renegade, when you listen to Renegade, the reason why Eminem's not on my list is because he had a lot of throwaways, like Lil Wayne. He's got a lot of throwaways, right? And I think Eminem's greatest, you could argue he was number one because on that Renegade record, when people say Eminem got him, cool. I'll listen to that. I won't disagree with that. But listen to Jay's verses on that song. Oh my God! So I don't know. We can keep going on Jay, but Jay, from his impact on culture, his consistency, his ability to stay fresh and stay current and stay relevant, and his ability to just churn out content at a crazy rate and it just sound amazing. It's laughable for me to say any other rapper is better than him. So that's it.
No question. Everything you said, I co-sign. I started with Jay-Z back in the Jazzo era when he rapped on Hawaiian Sophie. I actually still have the actual record.
That's dope. That's dope.
Hawaiian Sophie. Yes, I have that. The song Originators. And for me back then, I loved that whole style of rap at that point where it was the fast kind of rap, the bump, stickety bump, Jay He was doing a lot of that.
Yep.
So I knew him from that period. But when I heard Reasonable Doubt, and I heard Jay say this in an interview. I think he did an interview with Elliott Wilson where he asked him, why was Reasonable Doubt, why is it your favorite album you've ever done? He says, because it took my whole life to write that album. He goes, I'll never have another album like that, where it took literally my entire life to write that one album. And I love that. And funny story, when I was playing basketball at UC, I had a teammate, I don't know if you remember, Michael Horton.
Absolutely.
And Michael Horton, this is a true story, he found out I was a big Jay-Z fan. And everybody else on the team was either Tupac or Master P, like No Limit was really big then, because everybody was from the South. Kenyon was from the South. D. Little's from Atlanta. Everybody was kind of, on the Southern rap. And and so Michael Horton, being kind of an East Coast kid, was like, hey, man, you like Jay, don't you? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, hey, let's talk about it. So we would, listen to Jay songs, and he would go, well, what does that mean? And so we would break down the lyrics. So he and I would go back and forth about the whole, double entendres and what he was trying to say. And then all the while we're doing that, Kenyon's blasting Master P, make him say, which there's no double entendres going on there.
So different. So different.
So different. But they each have their place, right?
100%. 100%. Yep.
In hip hop. And just quickly on Jay, he has more number one albums than any other solo artist in the history of music. When I tell people that, they're like, wait a minute, the history of music? And I'm like,
right.
Michael Jackson. I said the only one that has more number one albums is the Beatles, and they're technically a group, and that blows people away. And if you really look at that, he's got number one albums for years where he didn't have a number one single.
Yeah,
think about that. That's even more impressive. That's like saying we're winning national championships every year without any McDonald's All-Americans. You know what I mean?
I think his first number one, Billboard number one, if I'm not mistaken, was the New York joint with Alicia Keys, if I'm not mistaken. I could be. But my point is, right. It was a long time. Big Pimpin' was not a number one. It was huge. It wasn't a number one across all genres of music. Annie was huge. That sample was huge, and it transcended, genres. That wasn't a number one record for him. But and I didn't even mention Hawaiian Sophie and the freestyles and the battles with Big L and DMX and the way that he completely switched his flow up and So yeah, you took me back further than that, but I mean, I'm excited that we got the same number one, because it's just it's laughable when people I treat this debate and I'll hear anything you want to say from 2 to 5. We can talk whatever you want. But when you tell me Jay-Z isn't the greatest, nah, it's a rap, bro. I can't even hear what you got to say. And it's like when somebody tell me that The Wire isn't the greatest television show ever. What we talking about? This is we just on different. We not seeing life the same way.
That's too good. I'm so with you on that. And I'll tell you what I love about Jay. I always say this: Jay-Z could play every position on the court. Nice. If he was a basketball player. Look at all the albums. He goes down south and he does, makes a down south banger with Big Pimpin'. Every type. I mean, he even wrote, the verses for Dre on Forget About Dre and the West Coast stuff. He could do all of that, kind of like what we talked about with Big, having the versatility to do a song with Bone Thugs, to do it with Total. He had that ability to do it all, play every position on the court. But what I loved the most about Jay was it's like this. It's if you look at Picasso's and different paintings, where you look at the painting and you see one thing when you stand at a distance. And then as you go closer with more inspection, you start seeing all these details and nuances, and you're like, holy shit, this is a totally different painting than the one I saw from back there. Yep. And then every day you walk by it, you see something different in the painting. I was listening to Pusha T's song "Drug Dealers Anonymous" with Jay-Z the other day, and if you go back and listen to that verse, he starts it off. It goes Federico, felony in the flesh, Sergio Tacchini, Inside the Mesh, or however you say. I mean, breaking that down,
Mm-hmm.
like when I first heard it, I was just like, oh, okay, he named the film director, he named an apparel. But the Federico, like, he's talking about the Feds, Rico, felony.
Yep.
The surgeon, like, that was the popular drug dealer outfit. I'm just like, people miss so much of there's so much that people haven't heard in his verses that are just absolutely, pure genius. And I'll say this, and I'll leave it on this, and that is, if you look back to my original statement of body of work, if you look at the two bookends from Reasonable Doubt to 444, I mean, those two albums alone, if you look at the time difference of when they were made and the excellence of those two albums, is absolutely unreal.
And we're talking 96 to when the 444 dropped? 2017?
That was just
was it 17? 18? 17, 18? Or 2021 now?
So he dropped it first. It was the summertime album. So that would have been 2017. So that was summer of 2017, I believe. Yeah.
So
crazy.
That's what? That's more than 20 years apart.
Yeah.
He sounds just as fresh. Whenever I tell somebody who don't believe us, listen to Can I Live. For me, Can I Live is the one song where, like, if I'm trying to persuade, no, you got it, hey, just listen to this right quick. Just tell me what you think. Just tell me what you think. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's all.
Oh, he's definitely. Now, I do want to say this real quick. I know now my buddies and I kind of get into it about this, but I tell you an artist that I think is very, very underrated, that I think deserves to be in a top 5 when it's all said and done. My buddies sometimes look at me like, are you serious? I'm like, if you go back from the first album to current, Rick Ross has been killing them, man. If you took Rick Ross and put him in the 90s, I think he's a monster.
That's fair. I'm not there with Rick. I will say that we talked about Nas's ear and his inability to pick the right instrumental, the right beat. As great as Nas is, he's number 2, right, for me. But that's not Rick Ross's problem. Like Rick that is so not Rick's ear for top-notch production and being able to pick the perfect instrumental for his voice and his flow and his cadence. Like, I would argue that, maybe other than Jay, there has never been anyone like him. My thing with the Rick Ross conversation is different because I'm still up on the line about the CO thing, and and taking the identity of a drug dealer. And I just feel like
the authenticity of who he is.
Yeah, I don't believe you, Rick. No, I don't believe you. How and that's I believe Jay, I believe Nas, I believe Big, I believe but I don't want to discredit. I think one thing about Rick that he should deserve credit for, just from a lyrical perspective, is from Port of Miami on. Whether I like the album or not, he continued to improve. Every time out, he gets better and better and better. And again, one thing on Rick is he does a really phenomenal job of picking singles, because sometimes I've heard a single like I remember I heard the Sorry joint with Chris Brown, and I'm just like, He always picks the right single where me being, I don't want to like Rick Ross, and then he drops a single and I'm like, this song is so amazing. It's so freaking good. And he's done that since Pushing, since Hustling. He's done that from day one, where I'm going to drop a single that just changes everything that's on the radio right now, and all you're going to listen to for the next hour is mine, and you're going to put it on repeat, and he does that every time out. So, I have issues with Rick, but like the positives of with Rick, you got something there for sure.
And when he drops, I think I'm Big Meech, VMF, I got to go with him. That's my guy.
Oh, that's your anthem. That's you.
My buddy said every time I walk in the room, they say you should be playing that song. I don't care where you are. And I was like, I agree with that. But this has been great, man. This is I think both of us, we grew up kind of in that same time period, and hip hop was so important. I think for our generation and the culture. So no, I've really enjoyed this. And so next time you come on, we are going to go from Bearcat talk to let's do sneakers. We're going to do a top 5 sneakers. You want to just do Jordans? Do you want to do top 5 Jordans, or you want to do top 5 sneakers?
Gosh, if we do sneakers, we might have to do a whole. UC gonna have to take a back seat, because I know what your collection look like, and I got a mean one too. We can have some talks. Let's just say Jordans, because I can.
Okay, we'll go top 5 Jordans.
MJ's gotten a lot of my money over the years.
Man, I guarantee you we bought him a lot of those Jets and whatever he's. Oh man,
but
there's no question.
For us to have a Jordan conversation, we got to have UC in that conversation, because what they did for that brand in the late 90s and 2000s, like, what you all did, you, Kenyon, Pete Michael, having that old, UC uniform with the Jumpman on it and the blocks down the side, with the red and white or the black and red 13s or the 12s. Like what y'all were doing at that point, like that, you guys were special, and it really, that is a big part. That is a big chapter of the Jordan book, is what UC basketball, Bob Huggins did for the Jumpman brand. That was a special, and I know we got the Under Armour contract that UC just left, and I know fans have been like, please, can we go back to Nike? Please, so we can wear Jumpmans again. special era. That was special.
And you know what? We definitely, when we do our next podcast, we're going to do that, because I've got some inside stories that I've never told before regarding the whole. Because that was my first year. Was the first year that the Jordan deal started.
Love it.
And the guy that was a big part of making that whole thing happen, he and I actually become really, really good friends, Gentry Humphrey, and he's, one of the VPs at Brand Jordan still to this day. So I got all the inside stories from him. So I got some good stories you'd probably like to hear, and Bearcat fans would as well. But I've never had anybody to come on and kind of really dive into those with. So
hey,
we're going.
UC fans, you're welcome. You're welcome, UC fans. See what I did for you? You see what I did for you?
They're gonna love you even more now, man. And I want to say this lastly. So I had you on for the podcast, and then I had Michael Perry on shortly after I had you on, who actually Michael Perry was the one that recommended me to interview you originally. And funny story, Michael Perry heard our interview together, and Michael said, "You're not going to ask me who the greatest rapper of all time is, are you?" So when we had the podcast, I actually asked him, like, just name 3, something like that, like name 3 rappers, and he was like, Pitbull. I'm like, what? Like, he's like, can I say Vanilla Ice? I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, Mike, we got to keep. So Mike's not going to be listening to the second half of this podcast. He can care less about.
That's not Mike's lane. That's definitely not Mike's lane. It's cool though. We all got our own lanes. You can stay in yours, Mike. It's all up.
That is the truth, man. I appreciate you coming on the Bearcat Basketball Podcast presented by Healthcare Management Group, and the Bearcat fans obviously are going to love this as usual, man. And we definitely got to get you on again here soon. Does that sound good?
My man, I appreciate you every time.
Yeah, no doubt, man. Appreciate it. We'll catch up soon.
Yes, sir.
All right, Keith. Be safe.
I want to thank everyone for listening to Season 2 of the Bearcat Basketball Podcast. Once again, you can follow me on social media I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Alex_Meacham. Meacham spelled Meacham. I'm also on Facebook and LinkedIn, Alex Meacham. On Snapchat, Big Meach 41. And I'm now dancing on TikTok at Alex Meacham 41. I appreciate everyone listening to the Bearcat Basketball Podcast. Go Bearcats!